Do you want to grow more in your garden with less work? Then I need you to do two things. One, subscribe to the Kellogg Garden YouTube channel, and two, keep watching this video. Now, I know that's a bold claim. Grow more with less work. We'd all love to do that, but honestly, you can. And Kellogg Garden has been in the garden world for over 95 years, and they're going to help us by bringing together some great resources so we can learn to do just that. And today, I'm going to talk about one resource you can use that will help you grow more and save a lot of time in the garden, and that's mulching. So you may say, Bridget, I already know all about mulching. Yes, I do. But honestly, I thought I did until I really started looking at different mulch sources and what they give to my garden. So let's talk about the benefits first about mulching. So first and foremost, weed control. Mulching is phenomenal for weeds. It creates a barrier between the soil and the outside world. And right now, the wind is starting to kick up here, and weed seeds just fly through the air, take purchase in our soil, and pop up and take room and nutrients away from our plants. So that barrier of your mulch really stops them from being able to take purchase. Also, if you have a few pesky guys in there, it can block them from the sun so they don't jump up and grow. So that's one. Two, keeping moisture in your soil. Moisture retention is an important thing, especially for somebody like me in Southern California where water is precious. But I think all over, in other areas, water can be a concern, but you don't want to waste anything. So again, that barrier that your mulch is creating between your soil and the outside world really blocks a lot of the air from evaporating the water, the sun from baking the water away, and allows the soil to retain that moisture longer. The third thing that mulch can do is temperature control. So for somebody, again, like me, who's in a hotter temperature, that sun can really beat down on your soil. So the mulch keeps the soil a bit cooler. It doesn't allow the sun to penetrate as much. For those of you in colder climates, the mulch can actually create more warmth for you, especially in raised beds and containers, which will allow you to start planting earlier and extend your season longer. So absolutely phenomenal. Now the fourth thing you can get out of mulch is nutrients. So as a nutrient source, it is amazing. We're going to talk about 6 different mulching sources, but we can actually add nutrients in just from our mulch, not just from amending and adding organic nutrients, but from our mulch, which I think is absolutely phenomenal. And then number 5 is soil structure, soil composition. Mulch can help with that. It's also a food source for all these microorganisms and bacteria and fungi that are in our soil. It is a food source for them, which then our living soil becomes rich and healthy and just beautiful to grow in. I find that year after year my soil gets better and better, and part of that is mulching. So let's dive in, let's go look at the different mulch sources, and then we'll talk about it again on the other side.
One of the best places to start looking for mulch is in your own yard. It's free, and by repurposing organic matter that you find in your yard, you'll be keeping it from the landfills. So the first source we're going to talk about is grass. A lot of people have it. I'm in Southern California, so we don't grow a lot of grass ourselves, and we're on acreage, so we really don't have grass. But here's some grass that we cut down and leave it for these avocado trees. I'm in an avocado grove. The trees drop their leaves, limbs, and then the grass and the weeds get cut down, and this soil is phenomenal. If you're going to cut down your grass and use it as a mulch for your garden, if you use it fresh, you want to make sure that you keep it at about 1/4 of an inch until it dries out. If you're in a wet area, it can collect water and it could be a source for mold. But if you let it dry out, so if you set it off to the side, then you can put more mulch in. Grass has nutrients in it. It has your NPK. I believe it's about 4-2-1, so the nitrogen, and then your phosphorus and your potassium. So a phenomenal source of nutrients for your soil. And it's free. It's right here. So great way to go and use something that you might throw out and pop it in your garden.
So the second mulch source I want to talk about are leaves. Leaves are phenomenal for your garden. They're phenomenal for the soil, but they're also a really good mulch source. This tree here is huge. You can't see it. It's taller than a 2-story house, and it provides enough leaves for my garden and for a lot of the land here. Leaves have a lot of nutrients, more than just your NPK. The roots of the trees bring up the nutrients from the soil and then deposit it into the leaves. And then when you use it in your garden, you get the benefits of all those nutrients. When collecting your leaves, you want to make sure that you use dried leaves. So collecting them in fall and winter or letting them sit and dry out is the best thing to do. You don't want to use wet leaves because they'll collect too much water and they can cover your soil too much. So you want to mulch them. You want to break them down. Best way to do that is either with your mower, put them in a pile, run over them with your lawnmower, or use a mulcher. I have a blower mulcher mix, so I can blow them into a pile and then suck them up and mulch them. I also mix my leaves with other sources, so we'll talk about that as well. But keeping them nice and small is a good idea. And if you have too many to use as a mulch, you can always throw them in your compost. Mulch source number 3 is straw. Now, I skipped one that you can find in your yards and landscapes, but I'm going to come back to that at the end. So straw is great as a mulch. Now, you'd have to purchase it unless you're growing your own grain. But it is a great insulator. You'll see it a lot with strawberries. You'll see it as side dressing. For me personally, I can't use it that much because I have a lot of wind, and that wind will just really pick this straw up. And straw has 4 of the benefits we talked about earlier. The one it doesn't have is nutrients. Straw doesn't really have any nutrients. It's the stalk of the plant, which is why people like it, because hay, some people feel like they get weeds or weed seeds with hay. But straw, you wouldn't have that problem. On the other side of that, though, as we talked about the weed seeds flying through the air and taking purchase, though they may not take purchase in the straw, the ones that are below it could still break through. So you could get some weeds or maybe a few more weeds if you use straw. But even with that being said, I still think that straw, because it's organic matter, because the living organisms in the soil are going to feed on it, and it helps with soil composition, I still think it's a good choice. So let's go talk about number 4. Okay, so I just moved right over here to number 4, which is hay, right? This is the grass of the same plant as straw. Hay, I think, gets a bad rap. A lot of people don't use hay because they say that if you use hay, you'll get weed seeds. Now, if you're using high quality hay, you don't really need to worry about that. And if you are worried about it, then let your hay sit out over fall and winter, let it age, and you should be good to go. On the other side, could weed seeds take purchase in your hay? Possibly. So for me, I like using hay. It is a great nutrient source. Remember, straw doesn't give us any nutrients, but hay does. And it's a pretty even NPK. So with that, I will mix it with something else. And that's really how I use my mulch, is I mix quite a few mulches together. So I haven't had any problem with weeds with hay. Hay might not be the most attractive mulch, but again, it has all the other benefits. So I think it's a really good source. And number 5 is right here next to me, and that is compost. I compost in this little bin, so I don't really have enough to cover my whole garden. And I like to use compost mixed into the soil also. So I do purchase compost. I purchase compost and I purchase composted manure. I love using compost as mulch, and I'm going to show you a bed that was mulched with it, and I had one weed and I pulled it out, so I have no weeds right now. And it does everything else, all 5 of the benefits, it covers them all. And it's free, right? So the only 2 things you'd have to purchase if you were to use them would be hay and straw. Everything else I'm going to talk about, you can either create yourself or get out of your own lawns and landscapes. But compost is phenomenal in the soil and over the soil and mixed in with your other mulches. So now let's go talk about number 6, the last mulch I want to go over. So mulch source number 6, wood chips. Now, I saved this one for last because it seems to be the most controversial, in my opinion. A lot of people tell you not to use wood chips in the soil because it can take nitrogen away from your soil. So first, can it take nitrogen away? Yes, it can, especially young, fresh wood. But you can offset that, right? And the long-term benefits of wood and wood chips, I think, is really, really important. One, you already have this source, or most of us do, in our yards that we can use. It is sustainable, right? You can regrow trees, so I think that that's important. It's a food source for all these microorganisms, bacteria and fungi that are in the soil, a really important source of food for them. Kellogg talks a lot about the forest floor and really mimicking how in the forest all the leaves and the limbs and everything just falls and goes back into the soil and adds nutrients to the soil. So wood, even though the short term it might be able to take out nitrogen, which I can offset, so we'll talk about that. In the long term, as it ages, and Kellogg uses aged wood fines in their soil, it becomes a huge benefit. It's great for soil structure. It can create aeration or air pockets. It can allow for better water flow and moisture retention in your soil, and it's a food source. Again, we want living soil. That's what we're looking for. So for me personally, and the wind is kicking up now, so you can see that, in all the sources that we've talked about, I actually need the wood chips to weigh things down. Otherwise, it'll blow away, right? So that's one reason I like to use the wood chips for my composting, but I use it with other sources. Now, to offset the nitrogen, I use composted chicken manure in there, and then by mixing in, I use my mulched leaves in here, which are going to add nutrients. I can also use hay, which again is going to add nutrients. Now, some people also talk about soaking the wood first in a diluted organic fertilizer to offset any loss. I've never done that. If you've done it, let me know how that goes. But you soak it for 24 hours and then you put it on top of your soil. Now for me also, some people like wood chips because it allows the water to trickle down a little easier into your soil, and it doesn't flood your soil. So you're getting, you're getting good water and good flow, but you're not getting too much at one time where you might be washing your soil away. Now I do drip irrigation under my wood chips, but I still think it helps quite a bit. So I really, really like using wood chips, and I do use it, and I like that we can repurpose what's around us, right? So we can repurpose the leaves off the trees, and then we can repurpose the limbs and the branches. So we've talked about 6 sources. I am going to show you a couple of beds, so what it looks like without mulch and what it looks like with mulch, and then we'll come back and do a quick recap. So here is a bed that is mulched with just compost. Now, I haven't watered today, but if we go down in it, you'll see that there's a lot of moisture down there. Oh, isn't that beautiful? And what you see there are no weeds. There actually was one weed in here, and I pulled it out. It was right over here. But very little weeds. The soil is great. The moisture in that soil. I haven't watered yet today. We're about to get some rain. Great moisture retention. Now let's look at a bed that is not mulched. And what you see are weeds. Lots and lots of weeds. Even in this little container. Same soil mixture as that other bed, but this one has no mulch on the top. This container is mulched with a combination of wood chips and leaves, mulched leaves. And again, I haven't watered today, but if we dig down in it, There's some nice moisture down there. And this is a crowded little bed, but no weeds here either. And in this bed, I've probably got about 3 inches of mulch. Now this bed here was mulch, but then I pulled it back. And you can see it hasn't been mulched for a little while. We're going to be putting some seeds in here, and we have tons of weeds. And it dries out really quickly. So it was watered just like the other bed, same time frame, but if I dig down in it, I'm not getting to moist soil until I get pretty far down there. There's a bit down there, and this has a drip irrigation, but it dries out so much faster. Same is true with this bed. Again, it's been pulled back, the mulch has been pulled back, and tons of weeds. I have some weeding to do before I put any transplants or any seeds in these beds. Now I lay down my drip irrigation first and I put my mulch over it. So to mulch this bed, one, I'm going to have to pull my weeds, get those out of there. And then the second thing is, you can see that I've got a few inches between the top of the bed and the soil. And I leave that because we have a lot of wind here, so I want room to put my mulch, and I don't want it to blow away. Now, when I'm mulching, I already have some established onions in this bed. When you put your mulch down, you want to make sure that you're a few inches away from the base of the plant. So really, I leave just a little room around the base of the plant so my mulch isn't too close to it. I don't want it to trap too much water. I don't want it to impede the growth of these plants. And the same thing is true with seeds. So it's a little harder if you're seed starting in your beds. The seeds start with mulch, especially if you're doing something like carrots or where you're spreading lots of seeds. So typically I pull back my mulch, and then I may amend my beds between seasons, and then I also will then start my seed starting, and then I'll bring my mulch back in when I have some seedlings. Now you can start seeds in a bed that already has mulch. So what you'll do then is just pull your mulch back, start your seed, and make sure that your mulch doesn't impede the growth of your seedling. The particle size on mulch is just way too big, so it can block your seedlings from starting. So now that we've done this big tour around the property and we've seen all the sources that we can use, let's do a quick recap. So the 6 sources that I talked about today: 1, grass clippings; 2, leaves; and 3, wood chips. I'm going to say wood chips as my third because all 3 of those sources can be sourced in our yards and our landscapes and repurposed in our gardens, so they can be free. Now, if you don't have enough branches and tree limbs that you've pruned off, then wood chips would be something that you would purchase. Also, compost. Compost is something that you can create, so it can be free, but you can also purchase it. And then we also talked about straw and hay, and those would be something, unless you're on a big farm, that you would have to purchase. All 6 of those mulching sources can help you do 5 things in the garden. They can help you with weed control, moisture retention. They can help you with temperature control, can help you as a nutrient source, and then also with soil structure or composition, and as a food source for the living soil that we're trying to create. So remember, I told you I wanted to help you grow more and spend less time in the garden. If you're weeding less and you're watering less, it's less time in the garden. And growing more is about creating the right environment. By feeding the soil, by cultivating really good soil, you're going to have stronger plants that grow bigger and produce more. You'll also have to do less as far as amendments are concerned with your nutrients and your minerals. So all of those things are going to benefit you in the garden. Now there are other sources for mulching, and I didn't talk about them because like rocks and things like that, they don't offer a nutrient source, but they do have benefits. We did also look at some of the beds that had it and didn't have it, and I gave you some ideas and some tips on adding your mulch to your beds. Now, one thing as far as how much mulch you should add, it really depends. It depends on your situation. It depends on the mulching medium you're using. Now, remember, I mix mine, so you're going to see numbers anywhere from 1 inch to 6 inches. And typically, the smaller the particle size, the less you're going to use a little bit less. The larger the particle size, you're going to use more, right? But the way to know how much mulch to use for yourself is to watch and test, right? So mulch creates that barrier. If you pull your mulch back and your soil is really soggy wet, right, then you may have too much mulch. It's just not getting enough airflow. The water is being trapped. So you really want your soil moist. You don't want it soggy, right? So pulling back and just looking at your soil and figuring out what's working for you. Do you need more mulch, less mulch, a different type of mulch? Do you need a combination, right? It's all about, the great thing about gardening, it's just all about being out there and trying things. So I want to thank you so much for joining me. I would really love to hear what you mulch with, so leave it in the comments, what is working for you, and you can share it with some of the other gardeners as well. And I hope that for those of you who haven't tried mulching or haven't tried one of the sources, that I've given you something that you can try in your own gardens. So thank you again. I will talk to you guys soon, and happy gardening.